Welcome back to the Reality Guys. I'm your host, Billy Blinks, joined as always by my co-host, Brian.
All right, buddy.
We're here to talk one of our favorite shows, Alone, Season 10, Episode 3. Big shout out to Lou, who's been holding it down with Brian. Hopefully we'll be back within the next few episodes, but until then, you got me. I wanted to record this out in the treehouse, Brian, but I just thought, maybe it's a little too kitschy for the first time. I'm going to earn my stripes a little bit, like our boys, like Cade and like Ann. I got to get out there and be out in the woods a little bit before I start pretending.
For sure. That's Treehouse's child's play.
um, this was an interesting. Now, obviously, I caught myself up before watching this week's episode, commenting a little bit on what you guys think. I think it's a really interesting dynamic to talk about the food versus the shelter. And the food versus the shelter really was another kind of central theme today. We made it through a range of about days 10 through 17 with the handful of the survivors. I like to call them the survivors, but they're out there. I want to start with Mikey. Mikey started off a little nauseous today. I was worried that we early on we're going to get somebody out. The stomach illnesses definitely have claimed people in the past, and I was worried for this guy because from watching the first two episodes through, I'm like, I think this guy is one of the contenders. Obviously, I think he's got the mental fortitude for it. He doesn't seem like a guy that's going to be bothered by getting really cold or being really hungry, right? And I think we get to find out more of his motivations when he does start to talk about his son. He has two kids that they at least talk about. Him finding out that his son is autistic. I thought it was also really interesting and something I wasn't expecting to hear on this show, or at least on this episode. Guy really introspective, right? Talking about the difference between ignorance and stupidity, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this guy is obviously kind of projecting they maybe came from a woodsy, outdoorsy background, right? And maybe not having to deal with things like children with autism, or frankly, maybe a lot of different type of people. So I thought it was really cool. I really liked his motivations. I think he's going to be a big player going forward. What do you think so far of Mikey, and how did you think he did this week?
Yeah, no, like I said before, I like it. It's really hard for me to not like somebody on this show. I feel like everyone comes on here for the right reasons. Their motivations are, I would say, pure. What he was talking about for ignorance and stupidity, I agree with you. You don't really know what somebody's going on in their life and how you can compare to other people's lives until you go through it. So I thought that was a nice little I would call it a monologue, right? When he was
Yeah,
like, I mean, you're really everything you're talking here. It's like a monologue. You're talking to yourself. Um,
that's true. Very
but
true.
yeah, I like Mikey. I was worried about him. Like, here's something that the show is notorious for in the beginning: is the more you see of somebody, the more worried you're going to be that they're going to be gone,
Yep.
and
Yeah,
that will be
it's
something
like the
late.
elimination edit, like in a show, 100%.
Yeah, and when we get to some of these people later, I'll have to like retract some of the things that Lou and I said the last 2 weeks. But yeah, he seems fine to me. He rebounded. You always need to go through a hardship. It's kind of similar to Cade. Like Cade had a tough time where he lost his arrows, and now he's like kind of rebounding back, taking the right steps forward. So it's anybody's game. It really is it's mistakes that mess you up. All these people can do it. They just need to do it. Like they make a mistake. That's what your downfall is.
Play mistake free ball, right? And a lot of that has to come down to what they talk about, the caloric intake versus just how much energy you're
Yeah.
putting out. We see a lot of that this week. You mentioned Cade, so let's kind of touch on Cade's week. Like you said, definitely a rebound week for Cade. Lost all 9 of his arrows really quickly in this early on in the series, which is devastating. Obviously, he was starting to build his own though, which I was like, okay, man, let's see how this goes. Obviously, he talks about his dad. I mean, all these people have families that were woodsmen or something like that. He
Mm-hmm.
talked about his dad a lot during this process. Um, he does complete a few hours and actually gets a grouse with one, which
Mm-hmm.
that's dude. That the feeling of having like building your own weapon and doing. I'm not a hunter or like anything like that, but for these people, like that has got to be like the most satisfying thing. Like that is the definition of surviving.
Yeah, and he said he's a hunter, so I was a little surprised. I mean, obviously losing your most aerodynamic arrows that somebody else made that's like perfect is going to be a hindrance, but you can create your own arrows. It's just the where they're going to go and how like like you were saying the accuracy and like stuff like that. You just got to move in closer, but he'll pick it up. I wasn't that worried about the arrow thing. It's something that it's pretty easy to overcome, especially in this like how early in the game. But yeah, it's a confidence booster. That's pretty much what getting a kill with your own weapons is.
Let's talk about Alan. Alan too. He's been having a little bit of a tough road as far as getting food early on. He's really eating, surviving off of fungi and pine cones. Not really very great. He decides, and we talk about shelter. So we're going to talk about some competing types of shelters that were decided upon in this episode. Alan went with a traditional wood and moss teepee. Very small, easy to heat, I would say, right? With that small space, really
Mhm.
highly insulated. I thought it looked really cool, honestly. And I think I would probably lean myself towards something like that as opposed to one of the larger structures that we'll talk about later. Um, just from a sensibility as like the calorie output.
Yeah, definitely. I and even in the past, I'm pro food over shelter early game because you can create your shelter over time, and
Yep.
that's kind of the case of these two people later that get eliminated. You need to have food locked down, and you can. The TP is, I mean, to me, it looks a lot simpler than what the other people are doing, building like a whole goddamn cabin. But for as a like non-outdoorsy person, it's crazy what they just create. Like just like, oh, this is what I'm gonna do. They just look at something and like, this is what I'm gonna do, and they just literally do it. And it's just I find it just so impressive.
You got Luke out there with like a development company building his houses right now, but we'll get to him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so Alan does get a change there. So I thought the happy moment and the cool moment of the episode was him freeing the what was the name of the animal?
I think it's called a pine marten.
The pine marten. It looks like a little mountain lion, little baby cub. Got caught in its snare, had the noose around its neck. It was freaking out, and he went and freed it, which I thought was awesome. I mean, I know they're not allowed to hunt those. They are not like a game species or anything like that. But there was a part of my head for like half a second. I was like, oh my God, is he going to like kill this little cub to eat it? And then I'm like, oh no, there's no way they're going to let him do that. Right. So really cool. And I did like seeing that because I think a lot of people misunderstand sometimes that people who hunt, again, not a hunter myself, but do know a plethora of hunters. Uh, they're not inhumane. They don't not love animals. In fact, some could argue that they respect animals more almost than others.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, like we always joke on videos, like, are you a pet person, not a pet person? Not even Brian specifically, but just even some of our audience in general. And we've had people comment about people being too obsessed with their animals, but these guys look at it from really like a actual nature sense, right? From the
Yeah.
planet, from the health of the planet, the yin and the yang, the circle of life, as it were. And like they do respect, they won't hunt what they don't think should be hunted. They will hunt something that may be overpopulated or maybe a predatory species, things like that. So I do think it's sometimes unfair, and I've seen in comments in other Facebook groups and things like that, who people don't watch these shows and they just like to comment in there and how like barbaric it is. I don't think that's very fair, frankly.
No, I mean it's definitely sad when like I don't like what like I mean I'm not like a weak person, I don't think, but like seeing like they see like a little animal and they just like absolutely rocked its world with an arrow, and it's like this squirrel has like a whole like neck missing. I'm like, I don't like seeing that, but I mean, you got that's the point of the show. You got to do what you got to do, and like your comments about the animal, they definitely respect animals more. I feel like a lot of people that have the obsession with animals in our normal life are about as me, not we with the animals. So that's why I always trash those people as hard as I can. But they do respect the animals. They've been like that through the whole season. Like he could have not filmed that and did it. And like that's the thing. Like he had the integrity to
Yeah.
free it, film it, and not like have that on his conscience because the killing stuff eventually, and it always comes up every season. I think it's already it weighs on you
Oh,
having
dude,
to kill stuff.
100%. And guess what? Karma. I think if you are someone who's like a naturalist or you believe in like nature rewarding you, he got a 5 pound trout, like
Yeah. Yep.
literally the next day.
Yep.
And that like I mean, he started to cry. Like,
Yeah.
and you could tell, I think you said, Brian, I think he there's the part of like, man, like the only thing I was able to catch before was something I'm not allowed to have, and like such a tease, right? And so to
Mm-hmm.
be rewarded in a sense with like the healthiest, leanest protein he could get, and that really can push him forward at least, hopefully through the next few days, right?
Yeah.
Really looking
For
forward
sure.
to see that.
For sure. For sure.
All right, next person I do want to talk about is Cade. Not Cade, sorry, I already said Cade. Luke, excuse me. Luke had a lot going on this week. I'm a big
Good.
fan of Luke.
He did.
Luke, I think, is the leader in the clubhouse right now.
Mm-hmm.
While some people are struggling to go try to get a fish or maybe anything, Luke is currently fermenting berry cakes.
Mm-hmm.
He has fish. He's got plenty of fish. He wants to have two shelters, one with less wind for the winter and one his summer house that he has right now. So not is he going to not only go build a second shelter, he's building a goddamn bear den.
Yeah, yeah.
This thing is like it's bigger than my house.
Yeah, he's digging underground to keep the heat in. All right, so I gotta apologize for Lou, for myself and Lou. We said Luke was like the lowest in the clubhouse leader
You guys are
after week
nuts.
one. We were like that shelter on the side, like it's gonna get hit by wind. But when we don't see him for episode 2, he's over here catching the whole lake and building another like shelter, like you said, like where it's not being hit by wind. So
Having fun.
I will eat
He's
that.
legitimately having fun.
I'm just reacting to what I'm seeing. So I love when like we go back to see somebody we haven't seen for a whole episode. It's like, hey, by the way, Lucas caught 11 fish, and it's like, all right, well, he's doing pretty well, and like, yeah, like he's doing the berry setup. I like that. I don't think I've seen somebody drying out making berry cakes before, like with that like
Yeah, I've never
plastic. So
seen it.
I always like seeing new things that people do on the show. Yeah, Luke's definitely number one because I don't want to jump over to Lee, but like Lou and I thought Lee was like the number one, and he's
I
the
know.
first one out.
I know.
So yeah, it's just double apology there, and like Lee, I thought he was doing well, but the problem is he spent too much time on that shelter. And he doesn't have like fat reserves, and
Yeah,
it's
he's
just
not a big guy. So
you
let's move
can't go
over to
crazy with the shelters this early.
let's
Can't.
move over to Lee. It's worth talking about Lee. Like you said, he's catching no fish. The net's doing nothing.
Hmm.
That sad, sad net he pulls in every day. No
Yeah,
fishies
gill
in the
net not
net for
working.
Lee. Um, those logs that he had for that cabin, dude, he had to up them
Yep,
and
and
walk
push
them
them.
and like fall. And dude, those were like a couple 100-pound logs. That dude cannot weigh more than like 130.
Yeah, it was definitely not a smart decision. Like not having food. Like if Luke was doing that with all the food he had, then that would make sense because he
Yeah,
had like a
Luke's
steady
also
flow in.
stronger dude.
He's
Listen,
also yeah that too.
you gotta be like I could never go on the show. I don't have any fat reserves to start, right? I feel like you got to do what that dude did on Survivor, the nerdy dude, and gain like 30, 40 pounds before you even go on the show because you're gonna lose all half of that in the first like week or two.
Yeah, there was a guy I think it was actually on season 8 where he like got super fat and he just became like a Snorlax at the end of the game, just laying there, and eventually he just couldn't do because he was just so tired from not moving for days. But yeah, it's definitely a strategy. Like you need to have a little bit of Lee was definitely the smallest person,
Yeah,
man, at least man on the show. But yeah, pour one out for him. I mean, we were taught, we're bigging him up. We were bigging him up hard on episode 1. He had the skills. I think he just because he was just getting a little ahead of himself, and that's what happens. It's your mistakes.
it's a bad strategy. It happens.
Yeah.
Uh, I would think the other eliminated person this week, I wouldn't really accuse her of bad strategy overall, outside of again trying to build shelter. We did say goodbye to Anne this week as well. Anne did also get a gross, which was awesome. So good on her, something to hang her hat on a little bit. Does survive 2 weeks. I just didn't think from the beginning, and this is not a male versus female, but 58 years old out there, she didn't have a lot of room for error as far as the physicality of this game. And she really in the last couple of days just like fell off a cliff.
Yeah, because like when we saw her, I think it was episode 2, we barely saw her.
Yeah.
So I was very worried when we kept seeing her a lot today. I was like, oh, that's not good. Like, because there was other people we barely saw. We haven't seen in 2 episodes. So it was not, and hers was like she was not feeling well. Like when she's like when they're it's scary when you're like, I can imagine like I can feel my own heart beating like that hard. It's like you got to go. It's not worth the risk.
No, it's not. Like you said, there's definitely some kind of physical thing. There's probably dehydration involved. There's the lack of calories, probably just lack of just frankly for someone her age, like the right vitamin intake. Also, like there is anxiety, there's fear. You are alone for 2 weeks. That is a part of the game I do not think, and I know they try to emphasize it as much as they can, but I just don't think that anyone can take that part into account. Just being by yourself. It
Yeah,
just
it's definitely the mental. This show makes Survivor look like a joke, right? It does,
oh my
right? It
god. This
does.
is Survivor. Like this Survivor is like the kids version. It's like how they moved. It's like how they have what was that, like endurance, like the children's version of Survivor. This is like the super adult version of that.
Yeah, yeah, and I just respect the people on the show so much, and I just enjoy it so much. I can't. I'm like, I love that it's reality TV that we can even cover it. That just like makes me very happy.
It is by far the most unique show we watch compared to everything else we watch. Everything else we watch, you can kind of tie a pretty good through line to it. Outside of like the confessionals and the cameras, like that's really all that's the same about this. But I do like being able to include it on the channel, right? Because, like I said, it is real. It is a part of the world, and this is the survivalists and the outdoorsmen are a
Yeah.
really big part of just the fabric of our like country, and it's a really big, big identity thing. And I think it's cool that it's just like funny enough, it is kind of like almost like we cover Ultimate Fighter, right? It is nice to kind of pull in sometimes just smaller audiences that aren't part of our kind of main audience that watch
Hmm.
all of our Bachelor and Claim to Fame and
Yeah.
all that type of stuff. So I love it, man. And I think what's cool about this show is I like the unpredictability of the week to week.
Yeah.
I don't have any idea who's going down next week. I don't have any idea
Yeah.
of what's going to happen, which I frankly really enjoy. There's
Yeah.
no Jersey Shore edits on this show.
And I just also another thing, just real quick, is just rooting for. I don't. I'm rooting for everybody. Like it's
Yeah.
fun to just. I don't have any hatred watching the show. Like I don't dislike anybody. I don't dislike anything. And obviously, like I see animals just repeatedly getting killed, of course, but I'm rooting for everybody to succeed, and that's what I think is fun to make it also fun to watch.
I'm now not lying, rooting for Luke because you you and Lou had him for
I
dead.
mean, hey, I'll admit that I was wrong. I'll admit that Lou was wrong, and we were wrong. It's just based. We're just. I'm just like this show. We're spoiler free. We just react to what we're seeing. I
Yeah.
was reacting to what I was seeing based off the 5 people I saw episode one.
Um. We'll be back to cover. Well, I'll be back. I think to next week, right, Brian?
Yeah,
You'll
because
be
Lou is also going to Greece for this wedding, so I will
so
be
if you
MIA
guys
for a
want to
while.
see, make sure you like and subscribe to next week. I'm probably gonna do like a Michael Scott Survivor Man type of review where I just go walk through the woods and talk it to myself for 8 minutes, guys. I think that's probably what you're gonna get. I don't think I can get anybody else to watch. Actually, now more I say it, I kind of like the idea of doing a Survivor
I
Man
think that'd
review
be
in the
actually very
woods.
funny.
So make sure you're getting a notification to catch me in the woods next week. Also, this week I'll be covering a lot of other things. Brian is going on vacation at the end of next week, but he will be here during the week. This week we have The Bachelorette and the Claim to Fame season premieres, which we're really excited for.
Hmm.
Temptation Island and The Big D are continuing. Make sure you're subscribed on our TikTok. Brian's covering Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, Love Island. I'm covering Below Deck Sailing Yacht. Coming up in July, the reboot of The Real Housewives of New York will 100% be covered there or on YouTube. Find us on Instagram as well. We're doing a lot of our interactions, so having a lot of fun there. But for myself, Brian, and Lou, thank you. Peace.